Hello everyone, and welcome to APT's new video challenge series. I'm professional poker player and personal coach Kenna James. Here to take this challenge with you. I'm looking at it as you would for the very first time. Marginal, suited, and unsuited aces. So let's take it down to the felt and take this challenge together. So I'm going to hit the take button and off we go. Now, as we're waiting for this to load, I actually suggested designing this challenge because this is one of those tough spots where we're not really deep stacked more than 100 big blinds, not exactly short stacked under 20 bigs, and yet we're dealt these marginal aces, which are either in the middle or the bottom of our range in many of these situations. And it's going to make it a tough challenge. Let's see, you're in the middle of the multi-table tournament, 50 big blinds, here we go. And right off the bat, we're in the big blind, we're faced with a small blind raise. So a lot of times, and I'm going to just explain my thought process and considerations as I go through this challenge. Some people would 3-bet and take the lead here. I think we have a marginal advantage and we're in a marginal chip position. Plus, when we're in position, we want to lengthen the hand, not shorten it. So I'm just going to go ahead and call to defend my equity. All right, we have a gut shot straight and probably at least an overcard facing a donk bet. Definitely worth taking one off. My plan for the hand is to take one off and reevaluate on the turn. Not just to make my hand, but also I could pick up bluff potentials with spades and other cards as well. So we're going to call and take it off. And sure enough, our opponent checks. Now, do we meet the check with a bet? Certainly we could, but now I go to level 3 thinking. What do I think my opponent thinks that I have? Well, it kind of looks like I have a draw. So if he has any reasonable hand, I expect him to continue. So I'm going to do the opposite of what he would think, in which I would make a bet and check it back and take the free card and then make a play on the river if need be. So now it looks much more like I have a flush draw that got there. I'm going to make a polarizing pot-sized bet to put my opponent to a tough decision. And we take it down. Off to a good start. Now facing a 2.5x raise from middle late position, not quite the hijack. And this is one of those spots, again, which makes this a challenge. This is where I'm going to avoid getting involved. If I was in the big blind, I'd definitely come along. But here, rather than bleed off chips, I'm going to wait for a better spot. So here, facing an open from early and a raise, it's a clear fold. Now my situation is it's folded to me in the cutoff. Definitely, this is the middle of my range, not the bottom of my range, to open up and play my position and my hand value. So it's check to me, usually, more than usually, probably 80% of the time is the pre-flop raiser. And it's check to me. I'm going to go ahead and follow up with a C-bet. Now, C-bets these days, they used to be standard half pot. Now they're more about a third pot. So I'm going to do just about that, 2,000, a little bit more than a third, and take it down. All right, now we're facing an under-the-gun raise. We should give a lot of credit to this opponent. From raising from this position. A lot of players don't deserve it, but with unknown, well, I guess I can look it over. Tight passive, intermediate, so if they're tight, they're probably ahead of my range from that position. I'm just going to fold to protect my chip stack. Now in middle position, this is a little bit too far out to play. If I was probably in the hijack, if it was suited in the cutoff offsuit, I would play it. Otherwise, this is just a standard play of a fold. And if I'm folding there, I'm definitely folding here, facing a raise from under the gun. And we're playing 27 hands, 3 laps around the table. you know, poker is a game of competing standards, or at least that's one way to view it. And those with the higher standards win. And playing ace rag from early positions, a losing play, negative EV, so we just fold. Here's the bottom of my range for under the gun. I'll go ahead and open for 2.5 and see what happens. We pick up the blinds and antes, and that's fine. Here from the big blind, facing a raise. Now it's a little bit different, where before we only had ace-5, now we have ace-10 suited, so we figure to have a lot more equity, probably 65%, maybe 60%. Anything more than 60% equity versus our opponent's range, I don't consider marginal anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and not raise on margin, but actually raise for pure value here. And just a little less than 3x. Small blind facing an under the gun raise. When we're in this, you know, 40 to 50 big blinds, I think we start with 50 big blinds here. This is where we gotta be careful not to get blindsided. You know, where we get involved in a hand and the pot starts to get inflated. We're out of position. And here, if you notice, we do have a chip advantage, though, over our opponent, who's only got 15,000 in chips. If we call, that means that's going to put their SPR at right around 3, which means they're going to be heavily committed to this pot, or should be. So we got to think like that, not just from our own point of view, but from the point of view of our opponent. So because this pot's going to be much more valuable to them, we're not going to know exactly where we're at in the hand. I'm just going to go ahead and conserve chips at this point because of my table position and where my opponent is raising from. So here on the button, we're facing a late middle position raise. Again, I can take 2 paths. I can 3-bet to take the lead and take control over the action, fold to a 4-bet, or I could just flat to protect my equity, lengthen the hand in position and on the button. That's what I'm going to elect to do. So here we have no pair, no draw. And these are these interesting situations where the more of a hand you have, the more you're going to check it and protect your equity of your hand. The less value we have, we might as well go ahead and take a stab and a bluff at it. And here I have ace high, no pair, no real draw. So I'm going to go ahead and make a positional bluff here for 1800 and expect to get check raised. If I get check raised, I'm done with it. And if I get called, I'll reevaluate on the turn. So, you know, that worked out good for us as planned, but I had a plan for the hand based on possible responses from my opponent. And I think that's a big difference between some amateur players and more advanced players, is they kind of anticipate what's going to happen or what could happen and then have a planned response. Here, again, now our hand is much bigger, so we're going to check our opponent profile. Tight passive, so if we 3-bet, we shouldn't be concerned with being 4-bet. So let's go ahead and 3-bet. And I'm going to 3-bet for 3x the raise size here. And as I said, in raised pots, when check 2 heads up, we're going to c-bet 80% of the time. This board doesn't figure to hit my opponent. I'm targeting hands like king, queen, queen, jack, even a couple of better hands like ace, jack, maybe even like 2 3s, 2 5s, and trying to elicit a fold from those marginal hands. I'm going to go ahead and c-bet. This time I'm going to go more half pot and take it down. Good deal. All right, here we're facing an early position raise. Just don't have enough value to continue. Negative EV. I'm going to fold and look for a better spot. Middle position, offsuit, bottom of the range, standard open. And now here, I think we're just a little too far out of position in this hand. If we were in early, ironically enough, if we were under the gun one, we could use this as a balancing range to balance our value hands. I think when we were playing it from middle position like this, I think we're just reaching into the cookie jar a little bit too far. So you can see my approach and a 50 big blind stack is much more conservative than it would be if we had over 100 big blinds or 200 big blinds at the very start of a tournament. Again, just really just outside the bottom of our range. Here I am going to play a two-way hand, meaning if it comes low, I can represent the premium hand like I am now by raising with this balanced range from under the gun. If it comes high, we can win it there. Now we're facing a donk bet with no pair, no draw, easy fold. And looks like we have one more lap around the table. So it takes a bigger hand to call than it does to raise, and we raised with the ace-10 suited, so we will go ahead and raise this spot and take the lead, forcing our opponent to play in an inflated pot out of position. So here's a tough spot. We're getting donk bet into. We flop top pair, top kicker with a backdoor flush draw, but the board is flushing potential and straight potential. In these kind of spots, they're really difficult. I really don't like pushing the action, but if we notice real quick here, our opponent has only got 2,500 left. So we're only looking at a spot in which we have, we're risking 7,000 for a pot of 16. So this I think is an easy ship it in and hope for the best. And we're going to need runner. So unfortunate in this spot. When we did play pre, we did have the edge, and maybe we should have reconsidered our, one of the things that slipped by me there was being aware of the opponent's stack size. Knowing that, I would have just moved all in pre-flop and maybe we win that hand. All right, so here I'm just going to go ahead and double the blinds and go ahead and make a half pot standard c-bet. Unimproved. Doesn't look good. However, our opponent is just barely hanging on. Might be playing position. They have 10,000 left. There's 8 in the pot. Tough spot here, whether to go for it or not and pull the trigger. Let's do it. Let's take the aggressive line and force them to a decision for all their chips and to stay in the tournament. And a lot of times that's enough to get the job done. Determination, plays such a role in poker. I don't think it's talked about enough. Standard raise, fold to a 3-bet here. 5 hands remaining. Standard open here. Now, like I said, 80% of the time we're going to c-bet. I could elect to check back here, do some kind of fancy play, but this board is, our opponents are going to whiff so often that we're just going to go ahead and c-bet. The one time we really should consider checking back here is when we've got a really tricky passive-aggressive, creative type of playmaker in the blinds that could board leverage us and represent a queen when they don't have it. But for the most part, we're just going to go ahead and c-bet and take it down. Standard open from late position. And suited here is a standard open. And wow, these guys do tend to play tight and passive, which is one of the great type of tables you like to be on. So here, this could be a very easy trap hand and try and come in, but this is a multi-way hand and we're only facing a single opponent. Plus we're out of position and we only have 50 bigs. So this is an easy fold. And here, not up to snuff. Here again, this is the bottom of the range, just outside the bottom of the range. Suited, I would play it offsuit. We're going to fold, and I think that's our last hand. Let's see how we do. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is a new type of video challenge we're doing here at APT. Let us know, and I hope to see you on a final table real soon. Take care, guys.